Hey guys, it's Lisa with Are You My Cousin? And so I am glad to have you here with me to talk about genealogy on this Thursday. It's our weekly Thursday YouTube/Facebook Live. So wherever you're joining us from, welcome. You can see I have Mary Eberle, our DNA specialist, is back with me today. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Lisa, thanks for having me.
Oh, always glad to have you, definitely, because DNA is not my strong point. So anyway, so guys, as you were coming in and finding us, hey Lisa, hey Danny, I would love it if you have had a genealogy success story this week, or just kind of briefly want to just tell us if you've, made a good find this week. It's always fun to kind of share those, I think. I don't know, I should have prepped you on that, Mary. I didn't tell you that's what I've been asking these days. But I can tell you guys, so for just from my personal success this week, I had received a box in the mail from one of my aunts, and I knew she had been cleaning out, and I've gotten a lot of stuff from her before, and she and I both really thought I had everything, and she was cleaning out and found some more things. And so this box arrived in the mail. I got copies of pages of a family Bible. I was like, I didn't even know I didn't know it existed. I'd never seen it, never found it. I had one interesting mystery photograph. I've got some really cool, just handwritten oral history things that people have taken, that people wrote down and kind of all stuck in a box over the years as they wanted to, kind of they were interested, but nobody ever really took up the whole genealogy gamut, but they did want to preserve family history. So they would, and so it just kind of kept filtering its way into my aunt. And so now I have this wonderful box and a lot of projects to do now. So anyway, I hope you guys have had, I don't know, Mary, if you've had any like really big win this week or not. And
just on client projects.
So that's always a good thing. A good win on a client project is a very good thing as well. So anyway, hey, June. Hey, Lisa says she found it. She's related family history fanatics to Devin. Oh, you're related to Devin. She's your 11th cousin. Oh, how fun. Well, Devin's a great cousin to have. That's really cool. Yeah. So that's always fun to find these things. I also had some really good luck on Percy recently. I don't know, Mary, if you use Percy very often, the periodical source index over at Find My Past. I've had some very positive results coming out of that, and able to pick up a lead on 2 separate brick wall ancestors that I have not, for several years, just haven't had anything else to look at. It's, one of those, you kind of put it on the shelf till the next thing comes along, and it's taken, several years. And so I'm really excited. I just have to find time to do it. All right, Catherine, you found the biography of your husband's second great grandfather. Oh my gosh. They'd gone from California gold rush, Nicaragua for several years, and then left during a revolution and back to Ohio. Wow. That's amazing, because it's very hard to track people that way. I did find a photo of my third great grandfather this week using Percy. It started with a search on Percy, which led me to a journal. And in searching to find that journal, I found a digital site that had tons of information for this county that had been digitized. It was one of those rabbit hole things. So anyway, okay, guys, we are here to talk about DNA. As you can tell, we have Mary. So we're going to get to that in just a second. I do want to remind you, you guys have probably saw in the news, the email this week, and on Facebook, Find My Past is having a rare sale. They have 20% off on 3-month and 12-month subscriptions. And so I'm going to pop that link into the chat. Just full disclosure, guys, this is an affiliate link for me, which means if you should purchase through that link, then I get a little bit of, I get paid for a little bit of that, but you don't pay anything extra. Just helps me keep the lights on here at Are You My Cousin? So, hey, Dave, good to see you. So you'll have that in the link there. That sale will go through, it says May 15th. At 10 a.m. GMT, which is like 5 a.m. Eastern time. So make it on the 14th if you're really interested in something like that. I think it's new subscriptions only. Yes. So, but I will tell you, if you have not explored Find My Past, I have really been enjoying it and finding a lot of really good information over there. All right, Mary, let's talk. Mary has some really great stories cases she wanted to share with us today about adult children using their own DNA results to find the birth parents of their late mothers. So in other words, adult children using their DNA to find their unknown grandparents. Did I get that right?
Okay. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I really didn't think that much about how folks would do that. I think of people using DNA because they're trying to find a birth parent, a birth father, a birth mother, but I hadn't really thought about taking it to that next level. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So people have been able to use their own DNA test results to try to figure out who their late mother's parents were. Sometimes this is just a father, so there was an unknown father situation, or sometimes when the mom was an adoptee, she might have never known who either of her birth parents were. And she, might have done traditional genealogical research or tried to get her original birth certificate, which should have the names of her birth parents on it. But, she wasn't able to accomplish that. And the living adult children, if they do DNA testing, then oftentimes, and I would say the majority of the time, they're able to figure out who her birth parents were. And, it's just their DNA test results. Roughly 25% of their DNA comes from each grandparent. So that helps us, have some information in addition to the birth story and maybe the conception story. And, just putting all the pieces together to come up with either a single individual. So let's say there was only one son in the family, so that it must be that son. Or sometimes it ends up being a set of brothers or a set of sisters. That we can narrow it down that far, and that's way more than what their mothers ever knew. But until or unless additional DNA testing is done, that's as far as we can go, to that set of brothers or the set of sisters.
Okay. Gotcha. Do a lot of people do this? A lot of people look for that?
It's interesting because lately I've just had more and more people reach out to me to ask about that. And I don't know if it was like the lead up to Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to everybody out there, belated, or what, but it's just interesting that it has been the most common request lately.
That is interesting. I mean, I do know there's, March obviously was a real focus on female ancestors. And that is a really popular topic among a lot of us as genealogists and as bloggers that we teach that. So I wonder if that's part of it too. Just a little more awareness and being able to actually look for them and having options that we didn't always have before. Definitely. So yeah. So you've been able to figure some of that out. Are you always able to figure it out, or is it sometimes not so?
Well, it all depends. And what we say is you need good matches with good trees. Because you're matching these people that you never knew were your cousins or your, great aunts, or, you didn't know that they were your relatives. And, if you just have a bunch of names or initials, then, you can't really tell much from that. But if you've got their name and a family tree, then that's where you can dig in and see, who are their ancestors, because some of those ancestors must be your ancestors. If you just think about any cousin you have, you can if you know who the cousin is, you can figure out, oh, well, we share our grandparents, or, we share our great grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, you don't know where in that tree your connection is. But if you look at what are called shared matches, so that means this person matches you plus somebody else in the database.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's quite a few people. So it's just basically a group of cousins in the database. Well, now you're looking at those trees and you're trying to find the overlap in them.
Right. So do you run across this sometimes? So I will be looking for, it doesn't even have to be that far back with a match, but I'll have so it's probably like a second great grandmother or something like that. And I'll match a lot of people. And so I'll have cousins. And the problem is we all go back to the same ancestor, and I can't ever seem to match anybody who comes who comes from another, like my great great grandmother's sibling line. Everybody seems to come off of her, and I can't seem to match anybody else coming in to build that tree back. I don't know. Does that happen a lot, do you think?
I think it does. Right. You want to find a tree where you're actually, like in that instance, you're sharing the ancestor one generation up.
Yeah.
If that's the one you're looking for, wouldn't that be great if it was in your DNA matches tree?
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes that doesn't happen. One thing I've done in that situation is I've gone over to familysearch.org, just because they have trees, and it really varies. Sometimes you've got one family and they've got an awesome tree on Ancestry, or meaning a lot of people have researched them, and you're like, oh, I can find 10 different trees for this family. But on Family Search, just depending, I think, on whose trees just happen to be built out, sometimes you can find a much better tree over there.
That's a great tip. I had not thought about that, because trees on like Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, they are basically user-owned trees. Whereas at Family Search, they're building, dare I say, a one world tree type thing. But so it's almost a crowdsourcing of all the trees. So it's not, once you put it on there, people can, I know this is controversial, people can change it, or et cetera, but it is a different type of tree, and it might, and I hadn't thought that could yield a different result, or a better result in some cases. I know you can also find out like who has made changes or requests to make changes there. So that's a really good tip. I mean, not even just for DNA, but for general genealogy research, is to check if you're on Ancestry and you've got trees and maybe they're what you're looking for, maybe not, head over to one of the other databases. But particularly because Family Search is a different type of tree in a sense, that might be a good one to check as well. So I had not thought about that, and that's a really good point. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Now my to-do list just got longer, Mary.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and one example I can think of, and maybe this makes sense, is I was looking at someone who didn't know who his birth father was, and he had trees, DNA matches with trees, but they didn't go back as far as I needed to go back. And in the end, over on familysearch.org, I found a tree built out for that family, and it went back to Wales. And I wonder, I'm not a member of the church that that is the owner, I believe, of familysearch.org. But at the same time, I think that a lot of members of that church go back to the UK, that and the fact that they were Welsh, I thought, I wonder if somebody was searching their Mormon ancestry, and that's why that one tree got built out. So much nicer.
I mean, it could have been, but you do not have to be part of the LDS Church to have trees over at Family Search, so it could be anybody. So you were talking about this particular one went back to Wales, and I think that's something that I see out there with the DNA kinds of stuff. It seems to be, if you are of Northern European descent, you have a better chance at making those connections. Am I right on that?
Right. You're absolutely right. And that's based on who has done DNA testing at Ancestry or the other DNA testing companies. And the vast majority of people are people of Northwest European ancestry. And, that means that they have the trees that go along with the DNA testing. And, so your chances of success are much, much greater with that kind of heritage.
Yeah.
We've got speaking of heritage, we have my heritage, which is based in Europe. It's in Israel. And they have really good trees on their website because they were solely a genealogy company before they ever offered DNA tests. And so what we find is that there are a lot of, I have found good German trees there and other European trees. And also they have a lot of Jewish trees and more Jewish DNA testers in their database as a percent than other places.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And Find My Past has very good UK trees as well, obviously. And really, I mean, and with that, US as well, just because of the history there, definitely. So, I mean, I actually keep trees at all of them. So, can't say they're always updated, but they're close. They're close. Okay, so Dave said he recently found a shared match of the sister of your great-grandfather, leading to finding another private tree that had a brother. And the owner of the private tree found the family records in Sweden. How interesting is that? And hey, Dave, if you don't mind me, was there, when you reached out to that owner of the private tree, were they pretty welcoming to kind of opening that end up? I realize it's the great-grandfather, but no issues there about finding these extra relatives. Sometimes I know people are hesitant to reach out to people on in the private trees. So yeah, but I would encourage people to do that for that reason. All right. So, you were talking about the mothers, the children finding the mother's birth parent. And it was kind of that, I know you were telling me a story of a mother's lifelong dream and she never fulfilled it. So the daughter, or was a daughter or son who fulfilled that dream?
I've had both.
You've had both, yeah. Could they have actually figured it out? Could the mothers, could they have actually figured it out before they passed away if they'd done DNA, or was it more, did they have the option of getting an original birth certificate, or I don't know how that went?
Right. Those are great questions. And for getting a hold of original birth certificates, and those are the ones with the birth parents' names on it, that is determined by state law.
Okay.
So, depending upon what state you live in, you have to figure out who can access those records. It might be no one. It might be the adoptee. It might be the children of a deceased adoptee. Virginia does not allow the children, but they allow siblings of a deceased adoptee.
Okay.
Right. So it gets complicated because it's usually the children who are looking or the adoptee themselves.
Right.
And, you have to figure out what are the laws, and it's just a simple Google search.
Right.
And then you have to fill out the forms, and, that can be cumbersome, but, so you have to figure out where the adoption took place and what are the laws. And sometimes it matters when the adoptee was born. From this time to that time, you can access them, and then more recent ones you can't. So it just depends on the situation.
And that's not all that different, really, when you think about, if you want to compare it to in parallel to just a genealogy record. I was looking at passport applications and researching those online, and it really depends, what year, literally what months of the year. Sometimes that thing they applied as to whether it was even created, and different ones for different types of individuals. And you really just have to, and I always tell people this, when you're into a new record set that's new to you, so whether it's a record set or whether it's something like this of seeing what's available, you really need to do that homework up front and figure out what is actually available and what's there for you. So I think that's a really good parallel. I think it's daunting to think sometimes when we have to go, oh, well, am I allowed to get this? What are the laws for that? And it's like you said, it's a simple Google search, but I think because it's kind of outside our genealogy world, sometimes it can be a little daunting if you're not used to doing that kind of thing.
Right. And also it can be a matter of calling. So once you figure out what state agency would handle such a request, it helps to give them a phone call and just say, here's the situation. Can I get it? What do I need to do? And, so far, all the people I've talked to in those situations have been really helpful.
I find that helpful when I call agencies. I haven't done an adoptee type thing, but in just sometimes knowing and getting the right office can be hard sometimes, but just the phone call, that personal connection. I know we're all into emails and things these days, but just sometimes it's just easier to pick up the phone and ask. And sometimes they have information and can provide information you might not otherwise think to ask for. Because how do you ask for something you don't know about?
Right.
Maybe their town has something very unique, or their state has something very unique that would impact what you're doing. So it's a good idea to always, I like what you're saying about calling. So definitely.
Yeah. And also different states change their laws over time. And I think that one of the most recent ones was New York State opened adoption records so that they could get the original birth certificates. So there's definitely a lobby, where people are trying to lobby states that have closed records to get them to open up. And, they talk to legislators and they explain why this is important, and, try to get a bill in the works and try to get that bill passed and signed by the governor. And, so if you end up in a situation where your state doesn't allow it, that's one path to take. And of course, the DNA testing also is another path. Because I one of the recent clients that I helped out, the mother had obtained her original birth certificate, and it had the birth mother's name and the birth father's name. It said he was deceased, and the mom, while she was alive, did all of this research on this couple. And she passed away, and her two daughters did DNA testing. And it turns out that the birth mother was correct, or maybe it was one of the birth mother's sisters.
Oh.
But the birth father, who was, written down he was deceased,
right.
That was not the right person. That was not the birth father. And he actually, that the man listed, might have actually gotten married that year, the year
Okay.
that the baby was born. So, I didn't spend a lot of time verifying that, but it was like, oh, well, he's clearly not deceased. If that, if the client found the right record, and,
Right.
but through the daughter's DNA testing, that was a situation where we were able to narrow down the actual birth father.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately, there were 9 sons,
Oh,
and one of them died before the conception. So I was able to rule him out. But then there were the remaining 8 sons, and I couldn't rule them out based on the DNA matches that they had right then. I did what we call descendancy research, where you build the tree forward in time, which is the opposite of what we're normally doing as a genealogist, right? We're normally building the tree back. And, I was able to identify living descendants for quite a few of the sons. So the client now is reaching out to people to say, would you, here's the story. My mom was an adoptee. She was born in this year and she died in this year. And, we're related to your family. And, would you be willing to help us out by doing a DNA test?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Well, good. I hope it works out for her to be able to find that. Dave was asking if Utah has open adoption records. Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
Yeah. That'll be that's an easy Google search. Just pop that in, pop that exact question into the Google, Dave, and it should pop up really good. Dave was also sharing that she had just responded yesterday back to his story of finding other family members related to his great grandfather, and so that's great that you're going back and forth and seeing what happens. I think that's really exciting to be able to do. I had something similar. I think I shared this. I know I've shared it with you, Mary, recently, where I had somebody reach out to me because we were a shared match on Ancestry. And I had my tree, and she's like, I can't figure out how in the world we're related other than this person, that my grandfather, and this is his name. And I said, I can tell you exactly how we're related. And I told her, and I said, and what's more, here's the family line all the way back to pre-revolutionary Virginia. So we're hoping to have a family reunion afterwards. And that was the case. It was an interesting thing. The gentleman was born out of wedlock, but he was known and accepted by his father. But then he had left the area, and so it just sort of faded. It just kind of faded from memory because he didn't interact that much, and so the people who knew him passed on, and the stories really weren't there. But that DNA, again, that shared match, and she just happened to hit mine because I was not actively researching that particular line anymore. And so it was a really, I just keep hoping some of my matches will hit like that. That was her genealogy, bucket of gold there. So, yeah. Well, Mary, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I know that you do a lot of this for other clients, and so I wanted to put Mary's information in the chat again, guys, because if you have something that you need help with, and you think you might be interested in working with Mary, feel free to reach out and contact her. Mary, I don't know if you want to say anything else or.
Great. Yeah. I was just thinking I had one story that popped into my head when I was thinking about this topic. And it's someone whose mother was an adoptee, and she passed away pretty young. I think she was in her 60s, early 60s. She had breast cancer. And he reached out to me and said, hey, she always wanted to know who her parents were. And it was a case local to the area. I'm in Wisconsin. And pretty quickly, I was able to figure out who the birth mother was. And again, like, he didn't have the original birth certificate, but he had a newspaper article that said the baby could be given up for adoption, and he had the birth mother's name and the husband's name, as long as nobody came and claimed the baby.
Right.
So he came to me to say, can you find these parents for me? And, I always look at that information, and I always, say, like, okay. And then I set that aside. And then I look at the DNA. And in that case also, the DNA revealed that it wasn't exactly that woman. Her first name was the same. She was an unmarried woman, but, we have all those pressures. And so she wrote down that she was married, and she wrote down her husband. And what I thought was really sweet was, so we're in Wisconsin, and I found out that she had moved to the East Coast. She married. She had 2 sons. And, I had that information from the census records, addresses and things like that. And after I had turned that all over to him, he went on Google Maps, and he looked at the addresses and how close, she was to where the husband worked at a university. And, it's just like he could envision the birth mother's history of, what happened afterward, what happened to this woman that, ended up giving up a baby that was his mom, and how she had basically, I think, reinvented herself. Not many people moved to New York City, especially in the 1930s, and, married a university professor and had kids. And I just thought it was really sweet that he took it, and then he said, this is so nice. I now I can see, I can see how they would, she lived really close to the university, and I can envision how they would meet each other and marry. And, and then she went on and would look like a very happy life. And,
that's nice to know there was a happy ending there for her. And, definitely. Yeah. Oh, I love Google Maps for walking where your ancestors walked. I think it's such a perspective for our research, and certainly for the DNA when you're discovering family ties like that. So, wow. Thank you so much for sharing today, Mary. I really appreciate it. I've picked up some really good tips. The family search tip. So checking trees at all the databases, but definitely checking the family search trees sometimes can be, because it's a different type of tree, is a great way to go. So thank you so much for bringing that up today. All right, guys. Yes, so that's what we have today. Feel free to hop over to the website any point you want to. We're going into the summer months shortly. Can't believe that. So I've got some fun things planned this summer. I'm not quite ready to tell you about them, but they're going to be fun. And I look forward to seeing you next time. So have a great day, guys. Bye.
Goodbye.